Let me ask you something. Um, have you had problems writing checks, paying bills, balancing a checkbook recently? How about assembling tax records? That's always a problem. Or business affairs or papers. How about a problem in shopping alone for clothes, household necessities, or groceries? Um, how about playing a game of skill or working on a hobby? Heating water, making a cup of coffee, turning the stove off after use. That's actually an issue that I've started having over the past year. Preparing a balanced meal. I'm maybe the major cook in the house, so that's not been a problem for me. Although my menu selection may not be exactly what the rest of the family goes for. Um, Problems keeping track of current events. I've always ignored the news, so that's always been an issue for me, but I get enough of it from other people in discussion. Traveling out of the neighborhood, driving, arranging to take buses. Haven't had a problem there. Remembering appointments, family occasions. I've always had problems with appointments. I tend to ignore those. So I don't have a whole lot of stuff new except maybe a little bit of problem with turning the stove off that we've noticed over the past year or so. So why am I raising those issues? That's actually a functional activities questionnaire. And again, we're looking at cognition, ability to maintain cognition as you get older. Some of that we tend to see as a natural loss of cognition as you get older. A friend of mine recently said, well, there's a reason why you didn't have 60 and 70-year-olds playing Jeopardy. Well, I understand all that, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't evaluate, you shouldn't be taking a look at what's going on. Today we're going to be talking about a different type of assessment. We're going to be talking about one of the most important ones. It's called MOCA, Montreal Cognitive Assessment. We talked about a different one in a recent video called the Mini-Cog. The Mini-Cog is by far the most popular. Couple of reasons. It's got really good sensitivity and specificity. Sensitivity meaning picking up a problem if it's there, and specificity meaning it actually pinpoints the correct problem, not something else if it's there. The other major advantage for the Mini-Cog is it takes 3 minutes, and the final advantage, 3 minutes not only to administer but also to score. And the final advantage is it's been proven to work with a primary care team. You don't have to have neuropsychiatrists or psychologists to administer the Mini-Cog. Now, remember if you score 4 or less on the Mini-Cog, then you maybe need to look at a deeper test. Usually the deeper test is the MOCA, Montreal Cognitive Assessment. We're going to talk about that again a little bit today, but again, brief introduction first. Ford Brewer, F-O-R-D, Brewer, B-R-E-W-E-R, PrevMed, heart attack, stroke, cardiovascular inflammation, dementia, prevent all that stuff. Help you prevent it. You do the hard work, but we educate you regarding things to look for, things to be aware of, and how to deal with it. Now, speaking of all of that, most people don't know the following chain of logic here, so that's one of the key things that we help you do. If you look at the beginnings of this YouTube channel, it started out mostly focused on cardiovascular inflammation. Why would we be moving into something like dementia? Let's go through that logic real quick. Again, the number one cause of heart attack, strokes, cardiovascular inflammation, inflammation of the arteries. Well, what's the number one cause of that arterial inflammation? Hands down, insulin resistance, diabetes, metabolic syndrome, carb intolerance. Number one cause of dementia, same thing. Insulin resistance, carb intolerance. We lose our ability to metabolize carbs as we get older. So that's what aging has to do with it. And in fact, just another reminder, I know if you've heard my other videos, you're hearing this a lot. Over half of Californians today have insulin resistance or full-blown diabetes. That's not something that I said, although I did say it. I didn't come up with it. UCLA did a study recently using standard public health information, which was mostly based on NHANES and hemoglobin A1C. And a lot of us know hemoglobin A1C is very bad at underreporting insulin resistance. So, what is type 3 diabetes? Dementia. So again, as you start looking at all of these facts, all of this logic, it becomes really clear. Dementia is very much associated with insulin resistance. Insulin resistance actually appears to be the #1 cause. So let's see what we can do about dealing with insulin resistance, but let's also see what we can do about measuring the potential cognitive impairment. Again, as I mentioned in another video, the Alzheimer's Association has some excellent information in their care plan for cognitive impairment. One of them is the Mini-Cog test that I showed a minute ago. Again, for folks that score 4 or less on a Mini-Cog, you want to go ahead and do what's called a MOCA. Now this is the S-MOCA, meaning the sequenced MOCA. And if you remember the Mini-Cog, it basically had 2 major components: remembering a list of 3 words and being able to draw the hands of a clock. Now this has the same thing. It has those 2. You start off with the 3 words. Then you go to what's called a sequence. Some attention span by subtracting 100, 7 from 100, and 7 from that, and 7 from that. Then abstraction, language, orientation, naming, delayed recall, the clock face, and again, you get a score on all that. I'll just run through these fairly quickly with you. One of them, they do a different type of memory recall. This one is 5 words. I was reading this earlier. I believe it is Velvet Face Church Red Daisy. I don't think you have to get these in order. Face Velvet Church Daisy Red. So I missed the order on it. And again, a trick on that is, as I mentioned on word recall, you draw a picture in your mind. So when I read this before, I imagined someone sitting in a church. I saw their face. It was covered with a velvet mask, and they were holding a red daisy. Now, and again, maybe I'm teaching you to cheat here on the exam, maybe not. Here's the sequence. Basically what you're looking for on this next test is go from 1 to A, 2 to B, 3 to C, 4 to D, 5, oh wait a minute, that's not 3. Let's go back. 1A, 2B, 3, I'm trying to read these backwards, and that's where 3C, 4D, 5E. The next test is attention. Start at 100, subtract 7, subtract 7, subtract 7. So 100, 93, 86, 79, 72. The next one, 12 would be 5. 65. So you go down through there and you maintain attention. Abstraction. What's the difference between orange and banana? Or what do orange and banana have in common? Well, they're both fruits. How about a watch and a ruler? They're both measurement devices. To say they both have numbers really doesn't give you credit on that. The next one is language. Take the letter F, start with as many words as you can with the letter F. So I'd start with FA, fabulous, fantastic, fan, fart. Anyhow, let's go to FB, doesn't work, FC. Maybe just do the vowels. Actually, not the vowels. Flat, frap, Puccino, Fibonacci, that's a type of mathematical sequences, but I don't think you can use proper nouns. Anyway, that's how that works. And you measure, you want to get 11 or more in 1 minute. You want to look at orientation. Orientation is time, place. They're just looking at place. So I'm in my office at my desk. Or naming, this is obviously a rhinoceros. Then you look at delayed recall. You go back and say, what were those 5 things? Face, velvet, church, daisy red. The clock face. We did the clock face on the other one. Again, I'll show you some of the problems that you get into with clock face drawings. You want to first of all make sure that they have the 12, the 6, the 3, and the 9 where they need to be. You don't miss any numbers in between, and you have the 2 hands pointing to the correct numbers. They don't really care whether you have show the correct long hand and the correct short hand. That's not graded. So as you can see, you get a little bit deeper in terms of ability to understand the patient's cognitive impairment or cognitive performance. And that's the MOCA, Montreal Cognitive Assessment. Oh, just one other thing I forgot to mention. If you go back to the tests, the research that's been done around these, as I mentioned before, one of the better meta-analyses was published in JAMA, and it was by Tsoi, T-S-O-I, Kevin K. Tsoi. As I mentioned earlier, the Mini-Cog came out as really high. The standard was the MMSE, Mini Mental Status Examination. It's proprietary and has some other problems, but that being the biggest one. Mini-Cog scored very high, only less than 3 minutes. The subgroup analysis revealed that the Montreal Cognitive Assessment had comparable performance to the MMSE on detection of mild cognitive impairment with 0.89 sensitivity and 0.75 specificity. So again, really good test. If someone scores 4 or less on Mini-Cog, then the next thing you should do is go a little bit deeper and use the Montreal Cognitive Assessment. Thank you for your interest.